We are recording.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this AEM Center webinar, Mathtastic, Making Math Notation Accessible. My name is Luis Perez, and we're so glad that you're taking time out of your busy schedule in your afternoon to join us this afternoon. I'm going to begin with just a few housekeeping announcements. First, we want to make sure that there's as much interaction as possible this afternoon. We love to learn from you, and we want you to learn from each other and your insights and your comments in the chat. So in case you haven't found the chat yet, we started with some pre-show banter before we started the recording. Make sure that you open the chat panel in Zoom, and then make sure you choose all panelists and attendees from the drop-down above the text entry field. Otherwise, you may be sending your message to just the panelists. Well, actually, you can't do that, but we can. But you may be sending the message privately to someone, and then the rest of the chat won't be able to see it. So we want to make sure everybody gets access to your wonderful insights, your wonderful experience. So make sure you choose all panelists and attendees. And in fact, I'm going to do that myself now so that I don't forget.
I just did the same thing, Luis.
By default, it sets it to all panelists and attendees to us, so, or all panelists. So I'm all set. Now you'll be able to see my comments. And then if you're on Twitter, if you're somebody who loves to tweet, we love for you to share what you learned from this webinar, any tips, any resources that you pick up, share it with your followers. We just ask that you tag @cast_UDL, all in caps. And that way we can see your tweet and we can add our own comments, our own resources as well to add to the conversation. And you can also use the hashtag #AEM4ALL. So again, it's great to continue the conversation after the webinar on Twitter by exchanging tips and resources.
And those of you that love Twitter, our social media director did in fact challenge us to perhaps try to get #Mathtastic in there as well. So I challenge you all, if you are tweeting today, if you can get Mathtastic going, that would be amazing.
That is your fun challenge for the afternoon. In case you haven't figured it out, we love to have fun with these webinars. We love to make them interactive and just have fun with the content. So again, Mathtastic, we love for you to share that as a hashtag as well. We also have closed captions available for this webinar. I want to thank Laura from ACS Captions. They always do such a great job of providing the captioning for us. And the way that you can turn on the captions is just look for that closed caption button in your Zoom interface, usually a CC button, and the captions will appear along the bottom of your screen. So thank you, Laura. We appreciate that service, and we hope that it's helpful to those of you who need that support. And there is a recording taking place right now, and within a week, we'll make that recording available on the AEM Center website. And Leslie's going to drop the short URL into the chat, but this is the same page where you registered for the webinar. You will find not just the recording from the webinar, but we've been trying to emphasize that the webinar is just the start of the resources that we're making available for each of these topics. So along with the webinar, you're also going to get an updated handout. We'll update the handout with Q&A from this session. So whatever questions we don't get to, we typically add those at the end of the handout. And the handout will also have links to all of the resources, all of the tools that we share during the webinar. So it'll be a handy tool for you to have as you try out some of the techniques and some of the tools that we're going to discuss this afternoon. All right, so I have a twitchy finger here, apparently. I'm advancing too fast. So the presenters for this afternoon, Lynn, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself first.
Oh, thanks, Luis.
Before you do, Lynn, can I just
sure.
I'm here, Janet Peters. I'm monitoring the chat. I'm going to shut my video off, but I wanted to give people a visual that I am really watching for your questions. So go ahead and put questions at any time in the chat, and if Lynn and Luis don't get to them at a certain section, we'll be sure that in the Q&A they get brought up again. So now I will disappear.
Thanks so much, Janet, because with over 100 of you, sometimes it becomes a challenge to manage the chat as well as do the webinar. So we really do appreciate Janet being here to help us out today. But thanks for that introduction, Luis. My name is Lynn McCormack. I work at CAST and on the AEM Center as a senior technologist. I started my career as an engineer and software developer and spent some time as a math educator. I'm still certified to teach math. And I think that I've always struggled with math. So I'm really happy to be here today to share some of those struggles with you and think through ways that we can educate our learners in the best way possible. So great to be here.
And I am Luis Perez. I'm a technical assistance specialist with the National AEM Center at CAST. We're a federally funded technical assistance center. We provide technical assistance related to accessibility in education and accessible materials, and we're based at CAST. Lynn is in Wakefield, Massachusetts, but I am based in sunny Florida. And with regard to math, I did struggle with math as well, which is one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about it. My struggles, I used to say I'm not a math person. And I've changed my thinking around that. Everyone is a math person. It all comes down to exposure and experience. So how well you were exposed to math and what your experience was like. And for me, it didn't come down to math itself. It came down to a language barrier and being an English language learner. And so that kind of set me back with math in middle school. And as you can probably guess, with math, it's all cumulative. So once you fall behind, it's difficult to catch up. But that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about math and making sure that everyone has access to it and that it becomes equitable for people to be able to build on math for whatever careers they choose to pursue. So let's just go over the objectives for today's webinar. We're hoping at the end of this webinar, you'll be able to define what MathML is. So if this is something that's new to you, don't worry. That's sort of like the first third or so of this webinar. It's just defining what MathML is, why it's important. We'll then look at different supports that are available to make math notation accessible, including text-to-speech, speech-to-text, handwriting recognition, and more. So the AEM Center is based at CAST, and CAST is where the Universal Design for Learning principles were pioneered. And CAST continues to do a lot of research around how do we support the variability of learners through a variety of different options in the learning environment. So we're going to look at a number of tools that incorporate concepts of universal design for learning to make math notation accessible. And then, of course, at the end, we're going to share some resources from the AEM Center and from other partners I see that some of them are joining us on the call today. So welcome Bookshare and Benetech. We're big fans of your work. I'm actually a Bookshare member myself. I rely on Bookshare to access accessible materials. So we're not really going to focus too much on the math instruction itself. We really wanted this webinar to be focused because we have limited time. So we're really going to focus on the notation. How do we take that first step of making the notation accessible? Because that's foundational. If you can't access the notation, then it's going to be really difficult for you to understand the rest of the mathematical concepts. So Lynn, anything you want to add to that?
No, I'm looking forward to this.
Great. So I am actually going to turn it over to you.
Super. So we were just going to throw this out here because we tend to have a range of folks that are on these calls. This is actually the third time we've given this presentation in different forms. So what are your thoughts as you first see this expression? And so we were hoping you might enter into the chat.
So we have a few nightmare, yuck. Someone guessed that it was the quadratic equation. Somebody brain hurts. I love algebra.
Yeah, love it. Awesome. Super. And just to clarify, there was somebody who asked about the captions. I just want to make sure that anybody who needs captions is able to get to the captions. And Leslie got to it. Perfect. So you're going to go to the captions at the bottom and click the close caption button from there. Hopefully whoever had the trouble is able to.
These are great answers coming in. I haven't done that since 1988. And that's the case with a lot of us who have children at home right now, and we have to help them with their math. We're like, oh no, I should have paid more attention.
And I'm going to thank Celine because she just reminded me that I didn't say what was in this image. So my apologies right off the bat here for falling down on the first page. So what's in this screen is you see an equation and it's x equals, and then on the top of the numerator, it says minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2ac. So thank you so much for reminding me to do that. I really do appreciate that. All right, great. So let's move on. And in this next section, we're gonna talk about MathML, and we're gonna talk about what is MathML and what are the benefits of MathML. So we're gonna move ahead to the next screen.
I'm trying to.
No
There we go.
So MathML, so what is MathML? What does that mean? It's an acronym in and of itself. So MathML is Mathematical Markup Language. So that's what MathML itself is. So it's a markup language that's used to display equations and other mathematical expressions on the web or in other formats like EPUB or Word documents or other sort of electronic documents. It's similar to HTML. So some of you may be familiar with HTML, but not familiar with MathML. That might bring some familiarity for you. But it's another markup language that some of you may know. Right now, the current state is that we are on the standard of MathML 3, but there has been work happening since January of 2019, and I would say that they're in the pre-draft stage still, addressing a new markup MathML 4, which I'm not sure the date, but Luis and I are on it, carefully monitoring the standards and where they are going right now. Go to the next slide. Great. And so I just want to mention this 2012 Dear Colleague letter because MathML 3 has been around for quite a while. And so in 2012, OSERS, or the Office of Special Education and Rehab Services, they sent a letter to all of the state directors of special education that was encouraging them, the state education agencies and local education agencies, to ask their publishers to use MathML when they request NIMUS files. Now, NIMUS files are a little bit out of scope for today, but if you have familiarity with NIMUS files or you don't have familiarity with NIMUS files, NIMUS is a technical standard used by publishers to produce source files that they then use to develop other formats like large print, braille, audiobooks. So if you happen to be looking out there at new curriculum or buying curriculum, you would potentially be asking for NIMUS format, and we can send you in the direction of learning more about NIMUS. But what is important from this is that the Office of Special Education recognized the importance of MathML as the standard for ensuring access to all. So that's really the most important thing, as well as you understanding that as you're looking for products and you're looking for curriculum, that you want to make sure that you get something that supports MathML 3 standard. And that's the most important thing. So before MathML was a standard, many equations were represented as images with corresponding alt text. So for example, here below, there's alt text that would say the description 4x plus 2 equals 2x plus 12. But many math equations are actually so very long, and this is again out of scope for today, but many math equations are actually quite large and could actually need a long description. And again, that's out of scope for today, but that's definitely a challenge with this. And as well as alt text generally isn't available to screen readers. And I mean, it's available to screen readers, but not necessarily for text-to-speech. Text-to-speech being the tools used by folks that have vision but need help learning how to read or reading the text for them on the screen. So there's different levels there. So alt text is generally not available for those users. You can go to the next screen. And so why is MathML important for accessibility? So the MathML allows your equations to be presented as structured text rather than those images. I just told you about the limitations with the images. And it allows the equations to be spoken with text-to-speech software, so both with screen readers as well as text-to-speech. And it helps all users learn the language of math. And I like to think that there's ESL, but there's also MSL, so math as a second language. And so it's really important that even if English is my primary language, especially if English is a secondary language, that I'm going to struggle with learning how to speak the language of math. So allowing it to be able to be spoken will allow me to practice so I can feel more confident as a math learner, to be able to say the right types of math representations. And structured text is much better because it allows for the images to be enlarged with good resolution. So it also has benefits for low vision users as well. I think that's it.
So let's pause there. We've thrown a number of concepts at you. So I want to just turn to the chat. How familiar were you with MathML before this webinar, or is this something that's new to you? And as Lynn mentioned, we're not going to get into the nitty-gritty of MathML and how to create MathML. That's beyond the scope of this webinar. Also, that's how I lost most of my hair, was trying to create MathML code. But what we want you to be familiar with is why it's important and why you should advocate for it, because it is definitely superior in terms of accessibility, not just for people who are visually impaired, but as Lynn mentioned, people that need text-to-speech support for learning challenges that they may have, for language challenges. So lots of benefits. And of course, if you represent it as MathML, there are tools that allow you to magnify it without losing the resolution. And that can be really helpful, not just for low vision, but for focus. So if you can zoom in without losing the quality, then you can present that expression much larger, where the person can have a more focused experience. So I can see it's fairly new to a bunch of you. If only there were a center that had a couple of pages with information about that. Oh yeah, the AEM Center. So we are going to share with you a couple of, actually a page that we have where you can learn more about MathML and where it is in terms of support. That has been a challenge. So Lynn, do you want to talk a little bit about that? One of the challenges with MathML?
The challenge is actually, part of it is the support for it in the browsers actually has been, if it's okay, I can go there a little bit, but it has been uneven. And oftentimes we'll show MathJax. I don't know if we're not going to show that as part of the presentation today, but MathJax helps smooth out some of those uneven implementations in the web browsers. So that has really been a challenge. And as the browsers upgrade, sometimes things go in and out of support. So that sometimes is a challenge where one browser works. And I know our friends at Bentech are here, and I know that they have been tackling that challenge and are continuing to tackle that challenge of what browsers and tools and combinations of tools are put together in order to provide the best learning experience, to make sure that like we've talked about, being able to enlarge the text, enlarge the math, and be able to have it read aloud to you. So definitely that has been a challenge.
So that's definitely something that needs a little bit more work, is getting that consistent support across not just web browsers, but reading platforms as well. But again, we want you to advocate for it because that drives the market. And so we need accessible math content and we need accessible math tools. The two sort of go hand in hand. I like to say it's like peanut butter and jelly, right? You can have a peanut butter sandwich and a jelly sandwich, but it's so much better when you have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and it all comes together. So we want to think in terms of interoperability and making sure that the content is structured properly with the right markup, and then the tools are available that support it as well, so that you can zoom it on the end user side of it. And I think there was a question, Janet.
Yep, just a quick question that you might address later, but it kind of goes with this question on programs and apps from Celine. What common programs apps support MathML? And Microsoft Equation Editor is compatible, but not the same, right? So maybe you'll get into that, but both questions on Microsoft and MathML.
Yeah, we will definitely get into a couple of tools that make math notation more accessible. In terms of the web browser, you know, all of the major browsers, with 2 exceptions, have pretty good support for MathML. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Lynn, but the exception are Google Chrome, and then Microsoft Edge, the Edge web browser that's available on Windows 10. It's now currently actually running the same engine as Google Chrome. It's called Chromium. And so that has been kind of a setback in a way, but there are efforts to bring, you know, support to even it out across the web browsers. So I would just tell people, watch this space. So if you're interested in accessible math, you know, watch the space, because it's ongoing.
And I would say that the tool we were just talking about, the MathJax tool, so many of the publishers or developers of math tools would potentially use MathJax to mitigate that issue. So I would be looking for that as a potential solution. And what that means is then that MathJax would serve up that MathML appropriately to you in whatever browser that you're actually using. So.
Yeah. Any other questions, Janet, while we're parked here?
Nope, I think that you've got them all covered, so I'll just interrupt you again. Thanks for being patient.
No interruption at all. That's what we're here for. So everyone, if you have questions, please share them in the chat. Janet has been kind enough to be monitoring that. We're going to pause a couple of times to make sure we get to your questions. But once again, if we don't get to them all in the next 40 minutes, we will go ahead and again, add it to the handout. So there's a number of ways. I do see a question about DuckDuckGo. I have not used DuckDuckGo. I know it's a web browser and that provides some additional security options. But a lot of times with the web browsers, it really depends on what's running underneath. So I just mentioned that Edge is now running Chromium in the background, which is the same engine that powers the Chrome web browser. So it really depends on what is driving DuckDuckGo. And that's something we can look at for you, Sarah, and post it in the handout. Unless someone else in the chat wants to chime in. I know we have lots of experts in the chat. So if you've used DuckDuckGo and are more familiar with that browser, please, by all means, add that to the chat. We value your expertise, for sure. And we don't have all the answers because, again, this is a dynamic environment when it comes to accessible math. All right, so I will continue with the rest of the webinar here. And so we're going to transition now from sort of the big picture of MathML and markup. And then we're going to look at a couple of tools for making math notation accessible. And I'm going to begin with Equatlo from TextHelp. And so Equatlo has a number of options that are really helpful. There are multiple ways to enter math expressions. So it's a great way to support that universal design for learning principle of multiple means of action and expression. And all that means is providing learners with a variety of ways that they can respond, right? So they can respond by typing, they can respond by speaking, they can respond by drawing or handwriting. It's just acknowledging that learners have different needs, different motivations, different ways that they can interact with the learning environment. And then I'm going to highlight one feature within Equatlo. So this is not a full Equatlo tutorial. I'm really going to focus on just a few of the features that are most helpful for making math accessible. And one of those being the screenshot reader that allows you to turn something that's on the web that's not accessible because maybe it's an image or it's in a video, and then we can make it accessible so that it can be read out loud with text-to-speech. So with that, I'm going to switch out of the presentation and just give you a quick Equatlo demo. I'm going to show you multiple ways to enter the math expressions. Like I said, you can type, you can handwrite, you can speak. I'm going to show you how to use the screenshot reader. So you can pause a video, for example. So if you see a video where they're illustrating a math concept, you can pause the video. That would normally not be accessible, but using the screenshot reader, you can draw a marquee around the content in the video, and then you can have that read out loud with text-to-speech. And then I'm probably not going to get to this, but there is an option called Equatlo Mobile, which allows you to capture math content on the go using your smartphone. And then that's synchronized to a document in Google Docs. So let me go ahead, exit out of the presentation here, and I will bring up my web browser. And here I am actually in Google Chrome. Equatlo is available for Chrome, for Windows, and the Mac. But I'm using it in the Chrome web browser today. And Equatlo is an extension for the Chrome web browser. And if you're not familiar with extensions, you could think of them like apps for your web browser. There is a Chrome web store. So just like on an iOS device, like an iPad or an iPhone, you would install apps from the Apple App Store. There's a store for the Chrome web browser where you can also find extensions and install them from there. If you need help with that, that's something else that we can add to the handout. And I see a question about the size here. Maybe that's better. I have a trackpad here, so I can zoom in a little bit. Unfortunately, my resolution is a little bit high here, so I will try to be descriptive in my instructions. So you would go to the Chrome Web Store, do a search for Equatlo, install it from there. And then once you install them, they will show up in the toolbar for your web browser. On the upper right-hand corner here, you'll see there's a number of small icons. And so I can hover over the one that says Equatlo on it. It's a, I guess that's fuchsia. It's like a fuchsia or a green diamond. And then I would just click on that icon. And if the gods of the internet are in my favor today, that would show up along the bottom of the screen. So now I get the Equatlo toolbar. So essentially an extension just acts on the content that you're displaying in the web browser at that time. Here I'm in Google Docs, I'm working with text, I'm working with a math expression. And so I can come in here and work on that content using Equatlo. So Equatlo has an equation editor. That's where we can type the math expression. So I'm gonna start typing here. Just gonna type the good old letter X. For those of you, it's always X marks the spot. But here's what's really cool about this. You have word prediction. So let's say that I want to enter X squared. I can just start typing SQ, and then it recognizes that what I want to do is add an exponent to that. And so then I can just go ahead and do that. Just press enter, and it's made that an exponent. I can put in something like plus, and then that adds that symbol to my expression. So it's providing that prediction, and that's something that you can turn on in the options for the Equatlo extension. So that can really speed up entering these expressions by using that prediction. Now, there are other ways that I can enter the content. So I'm gonna go ahead and clear that. Just gonna press clear. And let's look at another way that we can do that. We can handwrite it. And I'm using the mouse here, so you're gonna have to excuse the quality of my handwriting. And if you look over on the left side of the screen here, you can probably see, let me zoom out a little bit. You can probably see that it recognized that, and it did it fairly quickly. So I just hand wrote it on one side, and on the other side, we have our expression as text. All right, let me clear that one, and I'll show you just one more way that you can enter a math expression, and that's by using your speech. I'll go ahead and select speech at the bottom of the screen here, or speech input, and then I'll press the start speech button, which is just like a record button that you would see on most multimedia applications. So I'll go ahead and try this. X squared plus 5. Pretty good, right? So there's multiple ways. You can type it with prediction, you can speak it, you can handwrite it. I'm gonna zoom out a little bit just so that I can see some of the buttons here. But once you've done that, once you have your expression as text, you can go ahead and choose insert. And it adds that expression into our document, just like that. And then of course, we could use text to speech, and it would read not only the text, but also the expression itself. Now, what's really cool, if I select it, you can see this has been added as an image with alt text. But in the background, there is math code. And so what I can do is select the image and then choose edit math. And look, what is that, Lynn? What do we say when something like that happens?
I think it's math-tastic.
It's math-tastic. That's right. So I've basically selected the image, chosen edit math, and then it's done the magic of mathastically converting that into text that now I can edit again and reinsert into my, my document. So that just gives you a sense of the multiple ways in which you can support learners in entering math expressions into documents. Now, there were a few questions. So
yeah, I can summarize those for you, Luis.
Sure, go for it.
So we have 2 questions specifically on Equatlo of work. Does it work with Office 365 Docs as it does with Google?
With Word, so there is Equatlo. There are versions of Equatlo for Windows and the Mac. And so you can go to the Text Help website and you can find out more information about the different versions of Equatlo. It actually is not a free extension. It's a subscription involved. However, as a teacher, we're going to show you how to get it for free. So stay tuned, because Text Help has been kind enough to provide Equatlo for free for teachers.
Great. That goes into the next question from Melanie. Do you get limited features with Equatlo's free version, or do you have to pay for a subscription for full features?
What there is, if I remember correctly, I've had this installed for quite some time, but there is a free trial. I believe it's a 30-day free trial. And so you can try, fully functional, no limitations for 30 days. And then that's where the subscription kicks in. You have to subscribe at that point. But again, as a teacher, you can get it, you get a premium account for free. And we're going to show you later where you go to get access to that teacher subscription. And again, I don't work for Text Help. So if you have those questions about, what does a subscription involve? What's free, premium, and so on, I'd really, really encourage you, go to Text Help, I think it's .com. We'll try to find that link and share it in the chat, because they can definitely answer those questions a lot better than I can. I'm really just focused on how does this support access for learners.
So another question on that, Luis, is from Indra, how students will need to download the extension to work through the problems.
They will need to install the extension on their Chrome web browser. And then one note that you should know about, there is a Chrome web browser on iOS. So if you have an iPad or an iPhone, but that version of the Chrome web browser does not support extensions. So you have to be on a Chromebook, a Mac, or Windows running the Chrome web browser for this to work. And the reason for that is the Chrome web browser on your Apple device, mobile device, it's Safari in the background. So it doesn't support these extensions. They're locked down. Don't quote me on that. I think it is Safari because Apple has a lot of restrictions.
Yes, I think you are correct too. Bill asks, how does the alt text look?
Well, you know what? In the past, I've been able to open that up, and for some reason, it's not working for me today. But when you right-click on the image and choose alt text, we showed you a slide earlier. So it's going to try to sort of put it into, natural speech, basically, how you would say it out loud. It's going to go in and put in like plus, PLUS, and so on. So for some reason, it's not working for me today. I know there's been some updates done recently, but that's something you can try out on your own too. If you have the trial of Equatlo, you can right-click that image, choose alt text, and then you'll see what the alt text will be.
Okay, a couple more questions. One from Kathy. Is there a program that allows math to show vertically instead of horizontally?
That one would be for you, Lynn. I'm gonna punt.
Yeah, I don't think that I think if you put that underneath it, it would not, there are ways to do that in MathML, and I know how to write those in MathML, but I do not know if this program allows you to do that or not. But I do think that the next one you're going to show, are you showing OneNote next?
Yes, I am.
Does that allow you to do it in Berkeley?
We're going to work through it.
Okay.
So again, but that's a great question that we'll keep on in the back of our minds as something we can address in the handout as well.
Yeah.
So we can research that for you.
And you can stop me, but there are a couple of questions on the reading of this. And it started back before with a question from Melanie, or no, I'm sorry, Megan, on does the screen reader work with, the screenshot reader work with screen readers in addition to text-to-speech? And in general, there's a couple of questions that have come up on the text-to-speech aspect of this.
Yeah, with the text-to-speech, I'm going to demo the screenshot reader. So let's hold off on that. But generally, you do have some support here for a screen reader to be able to read in Google Docs. Of course, you know, it's not, in my experience, I haven't found it to be as easy for me. I use a screen reader, not full time, but I do use a screen reader quite a bit. And I've had some issues with navigating in Google Docs. And that may just have to do always. There's a combination that comes into play, right? Your web browser, your screen reader, and your system that you're on, whether it's Mac, Windows, and so on. So like the stars aligning, all of those things need to work in concert. So I would say it really depends on what your setup is in terms of technology, how great that screen reader support. How's that for a political answer? It depends.
It sounds right. And then one more, and I will let the chat settle for a second, but can the text-to-speech be translated? Which I think is what you just answered as well.
Yep. Yeah, there are, for instance, Equatlo has a companion tool from TextHelp, Read and Write for Google, and that has translation features built into it. So that's something to explore as well. All right, so in the interest of time, keep all those wonderful questions coming. You're all definitely engaged with this topic, I can tell. And again, we don't have all the answers, but we will make sure that we research whatever we don't know. So we'll admit what we don't know and then research some of the other options. So what I want to do to finish this Equatlo demonstration off here, just show you there is a mobile version of Equatlo, and it's a web app basically. You just go to m.equa, so without the e.io. And what that lets you do is do a lot of the same things, see, from your mobile device. And then it's synced over to your Google Doc that you've connected to. So in here, I can handwrite an expression, I can speak an expression, or I can take a picture of an expression. So maybe there's a whiteboard that I want to take a picture of, and then have that content be converted to math that I can work with in my Google Doc. I'm not going to demo that today. That's something you can learn more about on the TextHelp website, but it works really well when you want to capture math content on the go and then have it sync back to a Google Doc. So I just want to make you aware of that. What I do want to show you, one of my favorite features here is the Equatlo screenshot reader. So here I've just selected the Equatlo icon, and then one of the options is a square with an arrow on it. And that's the screenshot reader. I'm going to select that. And then here I've opened up a page on Wikipedia that has a number of expressions that are images. And they're not, I've tested them, they're not all accessible. But here's what I can do with a screenshot reader. I can use the crosshairs here, and I can draw a marquee around any of these expressions and watch what happens. Cross your fingers. Gonna make a liar out of me.
X squared plus 2x minus 2 equals 0.
How about that? It took something that was not accessible and made it accessible by enabling text-to-speech for it. What is that, Lynn?
I think that's mathtastic.
I think that's mathtastic as well.
The fact that it actually worked is mathtastic.
Now, the other thing is, so we can go back and replay this as many times as we need to, but there's also this more options button. It looks like 3 little dots. If you select that, for those of you that work with more advanced, math, you can copy the code for MathML right out of here. So it gives you that flexibility of, here's the support for now, right? And here's the support for other applications that are more advanced. So the code is there in the background. If you want to copy it and take a look at it, just paste it into a text file and you'll be able to see the MathML code, and then you will be a little bit overwhelmed. So it'll be like that expression that we showed you at the beginning, but even more so. All right, let's do some more mathtastic stuff here. I'm going to go to another example here. Khan Academy, right? Lots of great videos on Khan Academy for teaching basic math concepts. One of the things you can do with a screenshot reader, you can pause the video and then draw a marquee around the content. Wait for it, wait for it. It's a little slow today.
ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0.
Wow, what is that?
Definitely
in the chat, everybody in the chat. That is magic in a way, right? Because this is a video, probably doesn't even have great resolution at times, but you can pause the video and you can use the marquee to make that content accessible. And then one last one. This is more of a classroom application. You're a student and you've taken a screenshot or taken a photo of the whiteboard and what the teacher's explaining. Once again, we can use the screenshot reader, and on that image, I can draw a marquee, and hopefully it'll be mathtastic.
Four x squared equals x squared plus 27.
There you go. Let's just close that out. And notice how it makes it bigger too, which is also very helpful. So you can get it with a little bit bigger size there, and it allows you to focus too on that expression. So again, this is just a quick introduction to Text Help's Equatio. I'm sure there's a lot more that I'm missing, and I'm sure there's lots of experts on Text Help's Equatio in the chat. So if you want to, go ahead in the chat, share some of your favorite features that you've used in the past for working with Equatio, or how are you using this in the classroom? We'd love to hear from you, your experiences with it, while I get set up for the next demo.
And there's a question from Melanie on Equatio, also has an option to copy as HTML. Is there any benefit to copy as MathML versus HTML?
And I'll take that. So you definitely want to copy that as MathML versus HTML, because then that will be a portable piece of content that you could then use in other environments that would support MathML. So I would definitely, I'm not sure if you pulled a piece of HTML out of its context, if it would actually be usable anywhere else. So
great. So I see a number of you. Someone uses this to copy the MathML into Word so that they can be translated into Braille. So that's something that we haven't mentioned, Lynn, is the importance of markup for that conversion to other formats like Braille.
Right.
So that's important as well. With images, that becomes more difficult. But if you have structured text, then obviously the conversion becomes a little easier.
Right, and translating into Braille and potentially into refreshable Braille as well.
Exactly. So great. So I mentioned that you can actually get Equatio for free. So Leslie's going to drop this short URL into the chat. If you go to bit.ly/Equatio, so remember the I and the O are capitalized, and then free, the letter F is capitalized. And you can get more details there. Just know that you're going to have to provide your email address in order to get that. So again, if you have questions, I know TextHelp has a lot of support, lots of YouTube videos that explain some of these features in more detail. So looking at the time, I'm going to go ahead. We definitely want to get to your questions, as many as possible. But just to wrap things up here in terms of the tools, I'm going to talk a little bit about OneNote. OneNote is Microsoft's note-taking tool. It allows you to store notes in one location. In some ways, I'm going to date myself. It's like a digital trapper keeper. So there, I just dated myself. I had a trapper keeper growing up. So it's a place where you can save all kinds of notes and resources. And it does include a text-to-speech feature called the Immersive Reader, which gives you access to read out loud support. And then in later versions of OneNote, they added a math assistant, and that's what I'm going to show you today. And that math assistant has ink support. It allows you to show the steps for solving an expression, and it has graphing support as well. And a fairly new feature that they've added is the ability to generate practice quizzes. So it takes the current problem that you're working on and it generates a form with additional examples or problems that students can practice with. So let's go ahead and just exit out of the slides here. And then I'm going to try to show you OneNote and how that works. And there's different versions of OneNote. I know for sure that the features that I'm going to show you today work on OneNote for the web and OneNote for Windows. They're not available in my version for the Mac. So those two, OneNote for the web, OneNote for Windows, I know that you can find these features in there. So in here, I've created a notebook. That's how you organize your content in OneNote. And I've created a note, which is my OneNote demo. So you probably already know there is the immersive reader built in. You could read this content with text-to-speech. But what I want to show you is the math notation. So this is going to be available in the Draw tab in the ribbon. So the area at the top of the screen is known as the ribbon. I'll go to the Draw tab, and then I'll use handwriting. This is the extent of my math knowledge. And then I'll use the marquee tool. So the marquee tool allows you to select content. And I'll draw a marquee around this content that I've handwritten. And then there's a math option. So I'll choose the math option. Let's see how well it does. Pretty good. And then, what's that?
It worked.
Yes, it worked. Now, if it didn't work, right? If your handwriting was not as good as mine, which by the way, mine is typically not that good. I really had to slow down. You can also choose fix it, and then you can go back and clean up whichever expression or parts of the expression it missed. And then the last thing you can do here is ink to math. So then I could choose that and it would turn it into text. And now I could use the immersive reader and it would read this content out loud. So let's go ahead and try that out. I'll go to my View tab here, choose Immersive Reader. Notice it cleans it up, so you're only seeing the content. And then I have a number of different features turned on already. So for instance, I have different colors for parts of speech and so on. So let's go ahead and play this back and see what we get.
With OneNote, you can clip content from the web using the OneNote Web Clipper extension, or you can create notes from scratch by logging into your OneNote account. With the Immersive Reader, you can customize how information displays, and lots more. OneNote does math now too. X squared plus 3 equals 7.
Wait, Lynn, what's that?
That's mathtastic, but somebody else said I'm math excited, so I think I'd be math excited as well.
That is math exciting. So I do hope that you're getting excited by just seeing all the progress that's being made with these tools, right? With using things like machine learning and artificial intelligence to do these conversions on the fly and in very little time, as you can see. So it's not like you have to wait for this to happen. Kind of happens almost instantaneously. Now, I did want to show you something even cooler than this, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be working for me. So here's what I've done, because we try to think ahead. I've brought up a video by the man himself, the product manager for OneNote. See, he didn't know he was going to be an invited guest. But what I'm going to do here is play a video that picks up from here. So he's opened up OneNote. He's written an expression. So I'm going to let Mike Tolfson from Microsoft tell you what else you can do with OneNote. So let me bring this up full screen. And then I'll press play. And this video, unfortunately, is not captioned. So we'll get the live captions from Laura. Thanks, Laura.
And I have an equation selected that I wrote out. And you can see it converts that inked equation over here on the right-hand side. Now I can also type my math out and the exact same thing happens. If I select an action, I'm going to choose graph both sides in 2D. And you can see it automatically has a graph that I can explore by just hovering my mouse over. And I can choose to insert that right on the page. I can make it bigger, smaller, I can size it. So really nice for graphing. Now I can also choose to say solve for x. And in this case, it's going to solve the equation. You can see it solved it right here. I can even click show steps and show steps for completing the square. And you can see all of the equation is actually worked out here. And I can understand exactly how that equation was solved. Now another nice thing, I'm going to close the pane and I'm going to go and select this equation again. And I'm on the insert, I'm going to click the math button again and show a different capability. So imagine I'm going to select an action and solve for x. And I want to practice a quiz. I'm going to go home, I've got a test coming up, I want to practice that math. I click generate a practice quiz. It asks me how many questions, I choose 3, and I click Generate a Quiz. Now using forms technology, we're going to analyze that equation and embed a form onto the page that has a bunch of questions that are similar but different to the equation up here. So now I've got a bunch of new questions, so I can click here, solve one, click another one, and when I'm done, I can go and submit this. So as a student now, what I can do is get my own practice at home. So I can view the results of that quiz. So as a student, I can click View Results. I guessed one of them right, but it shows me which did I get wrong, which did I get right. So all of this is an automatic quiz practice generation built into our math tools. Now the last thing I want to show is something that's called Ink Replay. So if I'm an educator and I want to watch how an equation was built, I go in the View menu and click Replay. And I can select the equation I want to replay and watch what happens. It actually writes it right back out for me. So now I can go and replay exactly how that equation was written. It's great to see how students are working through their problems, or if students have notes from the teacher, they can go and watch how the teacher created that equation.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate your support today. Didn't know you were going to be a guest host or guest of our webinar today. So I'm
going to show the new screen recording in Flipgrid. This is great for educators who want to demonstrate the assignment. It's also great for students who want to show their work and capture their screen. So I'm going to click the big green.
There we go. So just to summarize, you can ink the expression, you can draw a marquee around it, and then it will turn it into text. You can then solve for X. You can interact with that expression. You can graph it. You can go through the steps. And by the way, you can use Immersive Reader on the steps themselves. So if you want text-to-speech to read out loud the steps for solving the expression, that's available as well. And then finally, there's that new feature, a fairly new feature, where you can generate a practice quiz. Learners can do that so that they can practice the math problems at home. So let's see, we have 7 minutes left. Maybe we can take a couple of questions. Let me just get through a couple of slides here, and then we'll come back to you all. I did want to talk about a couple of other tools. Desmos. If you're not familiar with Desmos, it is a graphing application, and it does have support for sonification, where you can listen to the graph with sound support. So we actually have a quick video that I'm going to play for you. This one is captioned, and this is one where I added the captions to the video. And so I'm going to play that. I'm going to bring it up in the web browser, and then you're going to experience sonification.
Let's turn on Audio Trace by pressing Option T. Now use the right and left arrows to navigate along the curve while the screen reader calls out the coordinates.
Intercept at x, 0, y, 1. X, 0.2, y, 0.9801. X, 0.4, y, 0.9211.
Press Tab to jump from one point of interest to another.
Intersection at x, 1.0141, y, 0.5284. 0 at x, pi over 2, y, 0. Extremum at x, pi, y, minus 1.
And finally, press H to trace automatically along the curve.
Playing graph.
It's worth lingering here to call out a few details. First, we trace along the graph from left to right. Next, the tone changes to indicate the vertical position of the graph. When the graph is below the x-axis, we introduce some static into the audio, further helping students establish a sense of the graph's position in the plane. Finally, points of intersection are called out with a delightful little pop. Let's play it again.
All right, listen carefully,
See if you
everyone.
can hear those 4 audio features.
Isn't that cool? So you're getting sound as a support for better understanding that graph of that expression. So that was Desmos. And then I will come back here, and I do want to mention we have Fred from Benetech. So Fred, if you, I think we can unmute you if you want to just talk a little bit about MathShare. The reason why I'm not going to spend a lot of time on MathShare is because there is a webinar tomorrow, Wednesday, at the time that this webinar right now is taking place. So Wednesday, April 22nd at 11 a.m. Eastern, there is a webinar from the Diagram Center where they're going to discuss MathShare in much more detail. So MathShare basically helps learners show and organize their work. They can work through problems. They can use dictation to explain the steps of the problem. So it's a great way to build that metacognition for math. So Fred, either in the chat or if I think we can unmute Fred if you're still on the webinar, but if there's anything you want to add about that webinar, please feel free to do so. Or in the chat as well. So we invite you to check out that webinar from Benetech. I think it's going to be a great webinar with lots of great content on how to use MathShare to support math understanding.
All right, Luis, there's a couple of questions that have come in that I'll throw out to you now. One is the cost for OneNote. Is there a cost? And if so, what is it? So I'll let you address that.
I'm using the free version of OneNote, and I think most of the features that I show you are covered within the free version. My suggestion, again, as with the text help tool, is go to the Microsoft website, do a search for OneNote, because there are also Office 365 subscriptions, and I'm not sure how the features are being rolled out as part of that. So it's always good to just go to the source, right, to the vendor, and then check out what's free, what's subscription, and so on.
In OneNote, do you know if it can have vertical equations in addition to the horizontal that was demonstrated?
That, I do not know the answer to that. That's another one that I'm going to look up for the handout. So look for the handout. We'll make sure to answer that one in the handout.
And then there was a question on linking specifically to that video, which I assume would be on the Microsoft site.
Which one? The demonstration?
OneNote, Mike's
The
video.
OneNote demonstration.
Yeah, there is a playlist on YouTube. We'll include that in the handout if it's not there already. But they've created a playlist that has sort of quick videos for each of their tools. So I'll make sure I get the link for that video and I'll include it in the handout.
And then another question that came in that I think is really interesting is, would you consider this OneNote feature as assistive technology or instructional technology?
Well, Janet, you are
such a lead-in, right?
You're an assistive technology person, so what do you think?
So I would recommend, Mylene, that you contact the Site Center, which is the Center on Inclusive Technology and Education Systems, kind of the sister project to the AEM Center at CAST, because we work with the topic of how assistive technology and instructional technology work together. And I would say the answer to your question is it depends, but I can give you a little more in depth if you reach out to me personally. And I'll put my email in the chat.
Absolutely. And just remember that a lot of things that used to be assistive at one point, they used to be more specialized, now are often built in, right? So we just consider them technology. So, you know, things are evolving when it comes to that. So we have just a couple of minutes. I want to make sure we don't run out of time here. You know, the AEM Center has resources for accessible math. We have a couple of pages. One focuses on the tools we've shown you today and others. So as the space grows, we're going to feature more tools there that you can use to access math content in an accessible way. And then we have a page that's more for developers, and it has information about MathML. So if you're interested in the nitty-gritty of how you create MathML code, then that resource is for you. So both are available on our website. Your task, so we want to make this interactive. We want to give you a task. Your task is to explore the tools that we shared with you today and then create a problem set using text-to-speech, using handwriting recognition, using text. And then as you work on creating those problem sets, bring any questions that arise to our office hours. So we're going to have office hours with each of our webinars to make sure that there's opportunities for you to answer or get answers to some of the questions. So for instance, the one today around vertical math. That's something that I'm going to look into, and then we'll have it in the handout, but also during our office hours. So when are those office hours? Well, this week, there's just one on Thursday, April 23rd from 4 to 5:30 p.m. So you can reach out to us during those office hours, ask questions. We'll do some guided practice. So if there's something that you missed during the webinar that you want us to go over with you, we'll do that one-on-one or one-on-3 or 4. And that will be fine. And of course, you can contact us at any time at aem@cas.org. So you're welcome to do that as well. And we invite you to stay connected with us. You can reach us by email. You can reach us on Twitter. Hopefully, you've all been sharing what you've learned this afternoon. If not, this is a great time to do that, @cas_UDL. Remember to use the hashtag Mathtastic. And then, of course, we're on Facebook as well. So there we're @CastUDL without the underscore. Now, we always appreciate your feedback. We're always trying to improve these webinars and our technical assistance in general. So Leslie's going to drop a link into the chat. It's bit.ly/distanceedwebinars in camel case. That means each letter, first letter of each word is capitalized, and then the number 4. So we really welcome your feedback. We're always trying to improve. With that, I want to thank everyone who participated in the webinar. I want to thank Lynn. It's always a pleasure to present with you. We're always a mathtastic team.
And I also want to thank Laura, who did our captioning today. Really, that's such difficult work, and thank you so much for being with us and doing that for us today.
And I also want to thank Leslie for managing the chat with the links. And of course, Janet, who is an expert on these things herself, for helping us manage the conversation and the questions. So really appreciate you all the work that you're doing to make sure that content is accessible to our learners, especially math content, which has not just a technical component to it, but for some people has an emotional component as well. So going back to that expression that we showed you at the beginning, just keep that in mind that there is an emotional component to math, and when people are stressed, there is challenges to learning as well. So let's be kind to each other and to our learners during this difficult time. And with that, that's the conclusion of this webinar. We're so glad that you joined us today, and we hope to see you on the next one. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great afternoon.